The rain had stopped just before dawn, leaving puddles scattered across the city sidewalks like glassy footprints from the night. On the corner of 3rd and Lenox stood a sleek glass building, Craymore Automotive Gallery. It was the kind of place that reeked of polished egos and polished leather, where the cars cost more than most people's mortgages and the staff smiled only if they smelled money. Marla Jennings stepped inside just after opening. Her shoes, basic black sneakers, squeaked faintly on the marble floor. She wore plain navy blue scrubs and a utility jacket still damp from the mist. Her hair was pulled back into a no-nonsense twist, her face free of makeup, her eyes framed by dark circles earned from a 12-hour shift in the trauma ward at Glenfield General. To the casual observer, she was just another tired nurse. But beneath her calm expression lay a quiet resolve. Marla hadn't come to browse. She was here with intent, and it had nothing to do with appearances. The dealership was cavernous, bathed in sterile light that shimmered on every luxury vehicle like a museum display. A white Aston Martin gleamed on a raised platform near the entrance, surrounded by a halo of LED lighting. But Marla bypassed it, heading straight for the row of hybrid SUVs, practicality cloaked in style. "Excuse me," she said softly, approaching the front desk. The man seated there looked up from his tablet. He wore a tailored vest, gold cufflinks, and a forced smile. His name tag read, Mason, sales consultant. "Yes?" he asked, his voice polite but tight. "I'm looking for an all-wheel drive hybrid SUV," Marla said, reaching into her bag. "I have the model written down somewhere." Mason's eyes drifted from her face to her shoes, to her scrubs, then back up. Something subtle shifted in his posture, a slight lean back, an invisible wall erected. He raised an eyebrow. "We generally work by appointment." "I understand," she replied calmly. "But I checked online, it said walk-ins are welcome during early hours." "Right. But those particular models start at around $90,000, Mason added, as if reciting a warning. "We keep them in our premium gallery. Reserved for serious buyers." Marla blinked, not with shock but with quiet disappointment. "I'm a serious buyer." He gave a shallow nod. "You might want to try our dealership on the south side. They handle more mainstream models." There it was. The dismissal. Not loud, not overt. Just a soft shutting of the door, so routine it didn't need to be slammed. Marla nodded slowly. "Thank you," she said. Then she turned and walked deeper into the gallery, ignoring Mason's glance at his tablet and the subtle shake of his head. She stopped beside a gunmetal gray crossover, letting her fingers rest lightly on its hood. It had a low ground clearance, wide doors, and a lift gate that opened with a voice command, perfect for her mother, who was slowly losing mobility due to a progressive nerve condition. Marla had saved for 3 years, clipping grocery coupons, working overtime, skipping vacations. This car wasn't a luxury. It was liberation, for her mother and herself. A quiet cough interrupted her thoughts. "Hi," said a younger voice. Marla turned to see a lanky, awkward man in his early 20s, his dress shirt slightly rumpled beneath a dealership vest. "My name's Eric. I'm an intern here, just started last month." He cleared his throat and added quickly, "I noticed you looking at the Everest Hybrid. I could pull up the specs on the showroom tablet if you want. It just got the 2026 upgrade." Marla smiled softly, surprised. "You don't need approval?" Eric glanced toward Mason, who was now engaged with a sharply dressed couple, beaming and gesturing dramatically at a metallic blue coupe. "Technically, yeah," Eric said. "But it's early and, well, you looked like you knew what you were here for." Marla chuckled. "That's kind of you." "I mean it," he said, unlocking the tablet. "This model's got adaptive seating, low-effort steering, and a rear hatch you can open hands-free. Great for someone who doesn't want to fight with a vehicle every time they get in or out." She watched the digital model spin on the screen and felt a lump rise in her throat. "My mom would love this." Eric paused. "Is she?" "Struggling," Marla said gently. "But still full of fire." He nodded. "Sounds like my aunt. Broke her hip last year but still tries to chase her cat up the stairs." That made her laugh, a warm, honest sound that softened the cold edges of the morning. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced down at the screen. "Theo, you okay?" She typed back a short reply, "Long story. Tell you later." She turned back to Eric. "Thank you for being kind. I don't think I'll be buying today, but I appreciate your time. Would you like to see the premium gallery anyway?" he asked. "I don't want you to get in trouble." He hesitated. "I think some things are worth a little trouble." Marla steadied his earnest expression, the faint blush rising in his cheeks. She smiled again. "Next time." As she left the dealership, The air outside felt less oppressive, more breathable. The encounter had left her wounded, yes, but not broken. People like Mason couldn't see past labels, uniforms, or skin. But people like Eric reminded her that decency still had a place in the world. That evening, she returned home to her mother's modest duplex and told her the story over herbal tea and the warmth of worn blankets. They laughed at the ridiculousness of it. But later, in the quiet of her bedroom, Marla opened her laptop and stared again at the car specs. She wasn't angry. She was ready. And unbeknownst to her, so was Theo. Tomorrow would come. And with it, a reckoning of a different kind. Theo Kingston didn't look like a billionaire. There was no entourage, no bodyguard, no flashy watch ticking beneath a custom suit. In fact, that morning he wore a wool coat he'd had since grad school and a plain pair of loafers that had seen too many boardrooms and too few polishes. But his presence, that was something else entirely. Quiet. Measured. Like a man who carried weight not in volume but in certainty. His driver pulled up to Kramer Automotive Gallery just after 9 a.m., the air still damp from the previous night's rain. Theo stepped out of the car and surveyed the glass-fronted dealership with a clinical gaze. His fingers adjusted the collar of his coat. His expression was unreadable. He wasn't here for confrontation. He was here for clarity. Inside, Mason was already in mid-sales pitch, walking a young couple through financing options for a sports car neither of them looked confident affording. As the door chimed softly and Theo stepped inside, it was the intern, Eric, who noticed first. He stiffened near the reception counter, his tablet halfway through a vehicle inventory update. "Sir?" he said cautiously. Theo nodded once. "I'm here about a specific model. The Everest Hybrid GT, midnight gray, if possible." Mason glanced over his shoulder. "Someone will be with you shortly, sir." "I'd prefer now," Theo replied, stepping forward. The tone was calm, but something in it made Mason straighten. He sized Theo up quickly, mid-50s, fit, conservative dress, no visible watch brand or designer tag to cling to. "Of course," Mason said, smoothing his expression into his default professional smile. "You're in luck. We've just received an upgraded model." Theo stopped short of following him. "My wife was here yesterday." Mason blinked. "Excuse me?" She wore scrubs. Carried a utility bag. Asked about the same vehicle. The silence hung like a taut wire. I'm not sure I recall." "You dismissed her," Theo said plainly. "Suggested she try a dealership on the south side. Said she wasn't serious." Mason's face flushed with color, then drained just as quickly. "There must have been a misunderstanding." Theo took a step closer, though his voice remained level. "The misunderstanding was yours. You assumed she couldn't afford the car. You assumed she didn't belong here." Mason faltered. "Sir, if I offended." "I'm not here for an apology," Theo said. "I'm here to remind you that value doesn't always wear tailored suits or shine shoes. Sometimes, value shows up tired, in scrubs, after 12 hours of saving lives." Across the room, Eric stood frozen. Even the receptionist had paused typing. "My wife is Marla Jennings. She's a trauma nurse. She's also the co-founder of a mobile health program that's served more people in this city than this showroom ever will." Theo let the words sit. Mason tried again, softer this time. "I didn't mean." "You didn't see her," Theo said, his tone almost gentle. "And that's the part that matters." Mason looked like he wanted to shrink into the tile beneath him. Theo turned to Eric. "You spoke with her yesterday?" Eric nodded quickly. "Yes, sir. I showed her the specs. She was incredible." Theo smiled faintly. "Good. Then I'd like you to handle the transaction." Mason's mouth opened. "Wait, transaction?" Theo reached into his coat and pulled out a slim leather folder. Inside was a cashier's check. "I'd like to purchase the Everest Hybrid GT, he said. "Paid in full. But I want the title in Adele Jennings' name. That's Marla's mother." Eric stammered. I can process that. But do you want to test drive it first?" Theo smiled. "She doesn't need to test drive something she already knows is the right fit." Eric nodded solemnly, taking the check with careful hands. Theo glanced once more at Mason. "Let this be your education, Mr. Mason. Not your punishment. You don't know who's walking through your doors. But more importantly, you don't know what they carry inside them." He turned and walked with Eric toward the back offices, leaving Mason rooted to the spot like a marble sculpture cracked down the center. By noon, the paperwork was done. The car would be detailed, topped with a ribbon, and delivered the following morning. Theo sent a single text to Marla. "Handled. You just keep being you. That evening, back at their home, a brick townhome tucked into a quiet corner of the city, Theo found Marla asleep on the couch, a blanket draped over her shoulders and a half-drunk cup of chamomile tea still warm on the side table. He didn't wake her. He sat beside her instead, the quiet hum of the house wrapping around them like a lullaby. He hadn't done it to make a scene. He'd done it because she never would have. And someone needed to. In a world that measured people by what they wore, what they drove, what they could flaunt, Theo wanted to remind at least one corner of it that grace, dignity, and purpose didn't ask for permission to be respected. They simply deserved it. The sun crept slowly over the rooftops of Fairgrove the next morning, brushing everything in soft amber. Marla Street, lined with modest bungalows and gardens in various states of bloom, felt unusually still, like it was holding its breath. In the driveway of her home, Marla stood barefoot in a thick pair of socks, cradling a steaming mug of coffee. She hadn't planned to be up this early, but something stirred her just before dawn. The air was still crisp, the scent of dew mixing with faint traces of jasmine from her neighbor's porch. Inside, Adele was still asleep, tucked in her reclining chair near the bay window. Her breathing was slow and steady, the soft hum of the oxygen concentrator blending with the morning birdsong. Marla took another sip from her mug and closed her eyes. Then she heard it, a low, purring hum coming from the street. She turned. A delivery driver, crisply dressed in a slate-gray uniform, was pulling into the curb in a polished, midnight gray SUV. It rolled to a smooth stop in front of her driveway. On its hood, a wide satin ribbon shimmered in the light, white with gold trim, tied in a perfect bow. Marla blinked. She knew the car. Knew it from the nights she'd studied its specs, memorized every detail, every safety rating, every accessibility feature that would make her mother's life easier. She just never thought she'd see it outside her own house. The driver stepped out, clipboard in hand. "Delivery for Adele Jennings?" he asked. Marla stared at the vehicle. "Yes. But how?" The driver smiled. "Purchased and registered yesterday. Paid in full. Instructions were to deliver at 8 a.m. sharp." Marla approached the car slowly, the world shrinking to the sound of her breath. She ran a hand over the smooth hood. The paint gleamed like a still lake. She peeked into the driver's side window, sleek leather seats, digital console, spacious interior. Everything her mother needed. Everything they dreamed of but never prioritized. On the dashboard sat a small card, folded like a tent. Marla opened the door, reached in, and picked it up. It read, "For every step you carried others, let this carry you both. T." Her breath caught. Theo. Of course. Her first instinct was to be mad. They had an agreement. Separate finances. Independence. She'd always said she didn't want his help, not because of pride, but because she wanted to stand on her own feet. Wanted people to see her for her work, not for who she married. But this wasn't about him stepping in. This was about him standing behind her. "You okay out there?" Adele's voice, thin and familiar, called from the open window. Marla turned, her lips trembling with emotion. "Come see, Mama." Moments later, Adele stood at the threshold, wrapped in her faded shawl, her hand gripping the walker she now used most mornings. Her gaze traveled from her daughter's face to the SUV, to the glint of the ribbon, and finally, to the soft disbelief in Marla's eyes. "Oh my stars," Adele whispered. "That's..." Marla nodded, smiling. "It's yours. All yours." Adele covered her mouth with her hand. "How?" "T was here," Marla said simply. They stood in silence, the weight of the moment pressing gently around them like a blessing. Adele shuffled forward and rested a hand on the open car door. "It's beautiful. But... you didn't have to do this." "I wanted to," Marla said. "And so did he." Adele turned to her daughter. "You earned this, baby. You always put others first. Every mile in that old car, every double shift, every sacrifice, you carried us both." Marla laughed through a sudden rush of tears. "I just wanted you to ride in something that doesn't rattle like a shopping cart." Adele eased herself into the passenger seat, letting her fingers trail over the smooth controls. "It's more than a car. It's proof that people like us don't have to wait for the world to see us." Marla joined her, sliding into the driver's side. The seat hugged her gently, and the world outside seemed to quiet. Later that day, they took the long way around the park, windows down, Adele's shawl fluttering in the breeze. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. Sometimes, just moving forward was enough. That night, after dinner, Marla found herself at the kitchen table with her laptop open. A notification pinged. An email from Kramer Automotive. Not a sales pitch, an apology. She scanned the message. The name Mason appeared midway through, accompanied by words like regret, unconscious bias, and a new training initiative. Marla exhaled. She wasn't interested in apologies. What she wanted, what she hoped, was that they'd remember the next woman who walked in wearing scrubs and hope. Then a knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. She opened it to find Eric on the porch, holding a cardboard cup holder and a tablet. "I brought cinnamon hazelnut," he said sheepishly. "Figured you might be tired." Marla smiled. "You're not wrong." He held up the tablet. "Just wanted to let you know, the dealership's been buzzing. Everyone's talking about what your husband said yesterday. Some of them are scared. But some of us, we're inspired." Marla took the cup from him. "You were kind before anyone else knew who I was. That mattered more than you realize." He blushed. "It was the least I could do. You looked like someone who carried a lot, and I've been raised to help carry what I can." Marla stepped aside. "You want to see the car?" His eyes lit up. "Do I?" Minutes later, they were both standing in the driveway, admiring the vehicle under the porch light. It wasn't just a machine, it was a monument. To resilience. To being seen. To quiet revolutions that didn't require shouting to change the world. "She's beautiful," Eric said. "She is," Marla agreed. But her gaze wasn't on the car, it was on the future. The following Saturday afternoon, the Glenfield Community Health Center buzzed with its usual rhythm, the rustle of appointment forms, low chatter between nurses, and the muffled thump of children's feet running down the hallway. The scent of antiseptic mixed with faint cinnamon from the break room, where someone had left a tray of store-bought muffins on the counter with the note, "Free for heroes." Jasper Mason, freshly showered and uncomfortably dressed in khakis and a plain blue polo, stood frozen near the front door, holding a clipboard and looking wildly out of place. He had no idea what he was doing. He hadn't worn anything without cufflinks in years. And volunteering? The last time he did that, it was a golf tournament where he spent more time sipping cocktails than swinging clubs. But here he was, at the health center founded in part by Marla Jennings, the woman he'd so casually dismissed only a week earlier. He'd replayed that encounter 100 times. At first, defensively, blaming exhaustion, corporate pressure, misread signals. But eventually, the excuse collapsed under the weight of something truer. He judged her. Not because of who she was, but because of how she looked. And that recognition had sunk like a stone into his gut and stayed there. He spotted Eric, now fully employed at the dealership, who waved him over. "Didn't expect to see you here," Eric said, handing him a laminated badge that read, "Volunteer, Supply." "I didn't expect it either," Jasper replied, trying to manage a half-smile. "But I needed to show up." Eric nodded. "Then you're in the right place." They headed toward the back room together. Stacked boxes lined the walls, each marked in black Sharpie. Gloves, gowns, gauze, masks, syringes. There were no luxury cars here. No shine. No suits. But there was something better, purpose. Jasper rolled up his sleeves. "What do I do?" "Start with the gloves. Organize them by size. Then check for expiration dates." He got to work, sorting the boxes with deliberate focus. The hours passed quietly, each task stripping away a little more of the persona he'd wrapped around himself for years. Halfway through the second hour, a small voice interrupted him. "Sir? I think I need help." He turned to find a girl, maybe 12, wearing a yellow volunteer shirt a size too big and a sling on her left arm. Her name tag read, Amari. "My brother's getting his shot," she explained. "But I'm supposed to help with deliveries and I can't really carry stuff with this." She lifted her arm with a sheepish smile. Jasper knelt beside her. "Well, Amari, I think I need help too. Maybe we can be partners?" Her grin widened. "You're not great at folding boxes, huh? Is it that obvious?" "Very." They worked together, mismatched but in sync. Amari read off the delivery slips while Jasper carried supplies to various rooms. They dropped a box of gauze, laughed about it, and started again. Somewhere between the third and fourth delivery, something inside Jasper began to shift, not just shame, but awareness. This place, these people, they were doing more good in a single afternoon than his dealership had done in a year of profit margins. After 2 hours, Jasper sat on a bench near the break room, sipping lukewarm coffee from a paper cup. His back ached, his shirt was rumpled, and his hands smelled like cardboard and sanitizer. But for the first time in a very long while, he felt real. A quiet shuffle of shoes announced a familiar figure. Marla stood nearby, holding a clipboard, dressed as she always was, in scrubs and quiet strength. "You didn't have to come," she said gently. "I know," he replied. "But I needed to." She nodded, then sat beside him, the silence between them not awkward, but thick with something earned. "I used to think I understood people," Jasper began. "Profiles. Habits. Demographics. But the truth is, I only knew how to read bank accounts." "You're not alone," Marla replied, her voice soft but steady. "A lot of people forget that character doesn't wear a name tag." He looked at her. "You built all this?" Marla shook her head. "I didn't build it alone. I just kept showing up. Day after day." Jasper was quiet for a moment. "Your husband. He could have ruined me." The way he walked in there, he didn't need to raise his voice. Marla smiled faintly. "Theo doesn't raise voices. He raises standards." Jasper exhaled, his pride worn thin. "I want to be better. Not just look better. Be." Marla stood and extended her hand. "Then keep showing up. That's how better begins." He took her hand, the gesture simple, human. Redemptive. Later that evening, he remained by the door as families came and went. Some came for vaccines, others for checkups or food boxes. A few just wanted company. None of them knew who he was or what he'd done a week earlier. But he did. And that was enough. Near closing time, Amari tugged on his shirt sleeve. "You coming back next Saturday?" she asked. He smiled. "Wouldn't miss it." In the back of the supply room, a handwritten note was taped above the glove boxes. It read, "For those who feel unseen, this space sees you." Jasper reached up and touched the edge of the paper, a lump in his throat. He hadn't come to be redeemed. He'd come to understand. And for the first time in a long while, he finally did. The autumn wind swept gently across the steps of Fairgrove Hall, stirring fallen leaves in soft spirals. Inside, the modest community center had been transformed. Folding chairs, dressed with linen, circled round tables lit by tea candles. There were no red carpets. No velvet ropes. Just hand-painted welcome signs, strings of white bulbs, and the warmth of shared purpose. The Glenfield Community Health Initiative was hosting its first-ever volunteer gala. No press. No donors expecting speeches in exchange for checks. Just neighbors, nurses, organizers, and volunteers, people who showed up when no one else did. Marla Jennings stood near the main entrance, adjusting the sleeve of her navy blue dress. She felt strangely self-conscious, accustomed to scrubs and clogs, not soft fabric and heels. But tonight wasn't about comfort. It was about honoring the quiet work that often went unseen. From across the room, Theo approached, guiding Adele carefully by the arm. Her silver shawl shimmered in the soft light, and though her steps were slow, her spirit was unmistakably proud. "She insisted on coming," Theo said with a smirk. "Wouldn't take no for an answer." Marla kissed her mother's cheek, helping her into a chair near the front. "I didn't doubt that for a second." "You know I love a good gathering," Adele replied. "Especially one where my daughter's the reason it exists." In the far corner, Eric helped arrange name tags, straightening chairs with his usual eager energy. Amari, her sling long gone, ran around checking on everyone like she'd been elected honorary host. Even Jasper Mason was there, dressed plainly, pouring cider at the refreshment table and laughing quietly with a group of nursing students. He didn't stand out, and that was the point. He was no longer performing. He was participating. As the room settled, Marla stepped onto the small stage, her palms lightly trembling. She took a breath and leaned into the microphone. "Good evening," she began. "I'm Marla Jennings, and I want to thank you for showing up." Her voice, though soft, cut through the room like music. The conversations died down. All eyes turned toward her. "Showing up doesn't always look dramatic," she continued. "Sometimes it means folding gowns. Sometimes it means carrying boxes. Sometimes it means standing beside someone when the world asks them to stand alone." A hush followed, reverent, not awkward. "This community," she said, sweeping her gaze across the crowd, "exists because of people who chose kindness over comfort. Dignity over ego. Because of people like Amari," she smiled toward the girl, who, despite a sling on her arm, showed up and asked how she could help. "And Eric, who listened when it mattered most. And Jasper, who reminded us that it's never too late to change direction." From his table, Jasper bowed his head, humbled by the acknowledgement. "But tonight," Marla said, her voice thickening just slightly, "isn't about speeches. It's about seeing each other." She paused. "I used to think I had to speak louder to be heard. That I had to prove myself again and again. But I've learned something better. Sometimes, it's enough to live your truth. Loud voices fade. But consistent action? That echoes." Applause rose, not thunderous, but honest. Like the clapping of hands that had done the work. After dinner, as the guests mingled beneath the fairy lights strung along the rafters, Theo slipped outside for air. Marla joined him, arms wrapped around herself against the crisp night breeze. "You were brilliant," he said. "I was real," she replied. That felt like enough. They stood together for a moment, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. "I have something to show you," Theo said suddenly. She gave him a curious glance. He led her to the back lot, where the hybrid SUV, the same one they'd driven through the park days earlier, was parked. But now, something new shimmered across the rear window, silver lettering, subtle and elegant, etched into the glass. The Marla Jennings Initiative, Mobile Health Outreach. She gasped, a hand flying to her mouth. "You didn't," she whispered. "I spoke to Jasper," Theo replied. "He's facilitating the donation of 3 more vehicles, one for each underserved area we mapped last spring. But this one is yours." Tears welled in Marla's eyes, not from extravagance, but from meaning. The words weren't just hers, they belonged to every patient she'd sat with at 2 a.m., every exhausted nurse who kept showing up, every young girl who needed to know she didn't have to be flashy to be seen. She ran her fingers over the letters, voice barely above a whisper. "I never asked for recognition." "I know," Theo said. "That's what makes you worthy of it." Inside, the celebration continued, laughter echoing against the wood-paneled walls, music swelling, feet tapping. Jasper refilled water glasses without fanfare. Eric handed out leftover cupcakes wrapped in napkins. Amari passed out thank you stickers she'd drawn by hand. It was simple. It was beautiful. As Marla helped her mother into the passenger seat later that night, Adele looked up at the sky. "You remember the day you came home from that dealership?" she asked. Marla nodded. "You said you never even saw the car." "I didn't need to," Marla replied, her voice catching. "No," Adele said, resting her hand gently on her daughter's. "Because you were already on the road to something better." They shared a quiet smile. Then, slowly, they drove home, windows open, night air cool, the city fading behind them. Not toward luxury, but toward legacy. And far behind them, near the back steps of the community center, a small paper note fluttered against the wind, taped to the wall by Amari. It read, "You are already enough. Now go show the world." And somewhere, someone new was about to walk through a door. And this time, they'd be seen.